Countess Nav and Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It is time to continue my discussion on D20 Modern, the modern take on the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. When we last left off, we were talking about modern-day environmental factors, things that you can encounter that might murder you in the modern day. Let's finish up with them today. Let's start with poison. Now, a weapon coated in poison that's used to attack you, some kind of gas you breathe in, even some kind of piece of food with a little poison in it that you eat. Well, any of these can poison you. When you are exposed to poison, you must make a fortitude save, with a DC appropriate to, of course, whatever kind of poison is being affected by it. If you fail that initial one, you will take a initial damage, a primary damage that you're going to be taking, which traditionally is an ability score damage. Effectively, it tears apart your body. And this will represent whatever ability score damage, basically a lot of effects that are happening to you physically and mentally from being affected by this poison. After about a minute, you make a second save, regardless if you made that first one or not. If you fail this one, you have the secondary damage, which again could be ability damage, could be something else entirely. Each poison has their own unique effects for primary and secondary effects. Now, poisons come in many forms. A liquid poison could, of course, be injected into someone, or it could be applied to the surface of some kind of weapon to stab into them. A solid poison, well, that's something you'd have to drink or eat normally. A gas-based poison, you gotta inhale it, you gotta breathe it in. Now, if I'm using a poison myself, I risk exposure. I have a 5% chance. Basically, I have to roll a 1 on a D20 every time I would use either like a poison weapon, which I'd be coating it with, or using some kind of poison in some kind of way that I'd expose myself to the poison. If I'm attacking with a weapon that I've already coated in poison, if I roll 1, I must make a reflex save. DC 15, or effectively in my messing around where I'm failing so horribly, I nicked myself and got poison in myself, and then, well, it's just not a good time. Now, some creatures are immune to poison, or resist it. If they're immune to it, it could be something like non-living creatures, constructs undead. It could be creatures without a metabolism, something like an elemental, or something that just lists it's immune to poison, like an ooze. There are plenty of creatures out there that have resistances or immunities to poison, and it will list it under those creature types if you're thinking about using poisons against them in the first place. Might not work. Now let's move on and talk about diseases. Diseases, when we talk about them, we're really talking about treatable diseases, not untreatable diseases. That's what we're really talking about now. Now, for a treatable disease, when you're exposed to it, it is a fortitude save with a DC based upon the disease that you're going to get exposed to. If you make your save, that's fine. Nothing happens. If you have failed your save, after an incubation period, you take an initial damage. Then after a period of time, could be a day, could be something else, every one of these periods of time, you have to make another fortitude save. If you fail these, you take secondary damage. In order to overcome the disease, I have to make 2 of those. If basically I failed my first one, in order to basically overcome it, 2 of those secondary saves in a row. Every time I would fail one, I get that secondary effects though, so I could make one, fail one, make one, fail one, and I'd still be suffering from it. It would be terrible. Now, all diseases will give you some basic types of them. It gives you some information on its initial effects. It's going to give you its DC, the incubation period, its secondary effects, everything you need to know to effectively deal with and overcome a disease. Let's talk about acid. Acid is yet another thing that could damage you. When you're exposed to it, it burns and melts your flesh away. Now, the strength of the acid will determine the damage that it will deal, whether you get splashed by it or if you get immersed by it, because both of those are 2 different damages. So you just determine which one is which, and then your exposure and however way it is will determine how it affects you. If you're dunked in it or splashed by it, and how strong it is, the damage. There is a secondary effect. If you're dealing with poison, if you're dealing with acid and you're standing around it in a large amount, its vapors are poisonous. Yep. When you breathe it in, you have to worry about taking constitution damage. It's a DC 15 poison basically check with an initial of 1 constitution and a secondary of a D4 constitution. So it sucks to hang around the gaseous vapors of acid because it messes you up. Don't hang around it. Now the last one I want to talk about is electricity. Because guess what? It's everywhere in sort of the modern day. You have it running through all these kind of things. Now the level of electricity, basically when you're exposed to it, will deal a level of damage. And different levels, different amounts of damage. It also has a different DC to save against it. You effectively, when you're exposed to this electricity, you have to make a fortitude save for half damage. Now, if you are not grounded, or if you have proper insulation, you will save for no damage rather than half damage. So there is the possibility of avoiding damage from electricity entirely. Just depends on the situation you're set up in. Now, I do want to talk about ability damage, because I've talked about a couple of things that deal it. Effectively, it's a special kind of damage that's not damaging your hit points, it's damaging your ability scores temporarily, reducing them for a temporary basis to make you worse at these various ability scores that you have. Now, you can also get ability drain, which is a more permanent version of it, that effectively your body's been torn about even worse. This is really bad when you're getting drain. Normally, damage is effectively healable. Now, regardless, except for Constitution, any of your scores, when they hit 0, you're helpless. When Constitution hits 0, you die. The fact is, Constitution is what you use to determine bonus hit points. When your Constitution goes down from ability damage or drain, every time your modifier is reduced, you lose that many hit points. You lose a number of hit points equal to your level. So if my modifier goes from 4 to 3, and I'm level 5, I'd lose 5 hit points. And it would go down every time into negatives until I get to 0 when I have no hit points. I die. Now let's move on and start talking about friends and foes and start talking about building creatures. When you design your own creature, you're going to have to come up with a basic idea with it, a basic concept, a basic description of what kind of creature it is. Once you have that, you effectively can put it into a specific category of the type of creature it is. Now that I have type, I basically have to look at what size of creature is it going to be. Once I have this, I've effectively gotten to a point where I can sort out this information here. I can basically determine, using creature's size and type, the basic number of hit dice it has, and the basic ability scores it has. Once I have these, I can look to yet another chart, and using hit dice, I can determine base attack, saves, skills, and feats. Now, skills and feats, technically, I just get the number of feats, the number of skill points. I actually have to look to the type of creature again to determine what these are going to be, what options I have. But I very quickly and efficiently, very dirtily, have put together a creature. Got size, hit dice. I got size, type, use that. I use these two to determine everything about this creature. Every bit of detail, just built it like that. It's a very simple, quick, and dirty way of doing it. And there are some problems to it, but it is a general, easy way of doing it. It is important to note, though, that magic and psionics might also exist. These are special abilities we haven't really talked about, which we will talk about at a much later episode, but for now, know that these might be powers the creatures you're building might have. But that's it for today. I talked all about the rest of the various hazards you can face as a character in D20 Modern. I talked about poisons, disease, acid, and electricity. And I did talk about ability score damage and its groupings because we talked about 3 things there that can cause ability score damage. It's important to note it. From there, I moved on and I began to talk about building a creature. And I went over the quick and dirty basics. There are a lot more details when it comes to building creatures and creatures in general that we're going to start to dive into next time. So that's what we're doing next time. We're diving into creatures. We only have scratched the surface here and gotten our quick, dirty little bit here of creatures. This quick little thing here, just to start us off talking about them. Okay, but if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows for the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link description below. There's some great rewards there. It helps to grow and improve the channel. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.